decade didn't have a strong banking system. The KBW Bank Index this year still down about a third, still down a little more than 30%.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm placing a new order to buy euro. Okay, you're the place to buy at 117.72. Oh, it's already executed. Okay, we bought right now euro at 117.72. Okay.
I think a tremendously good job is they addressed the gearing in the system. They addressed, high quality assets weren't working. They got after the top part of the capital stack, so allowed the financing mechanism to work and allowed the banking system to work. That is, I think people grossly underestimate how velocity, multiple set of forms. People just look at total velocity. Financing has to work for a system to grow and for an economy to be vibrant. And I think the Fed did a great job with that early on.
Hey, Rick, great to catch you up. Stay well, won't you? Looking forward to seeing you soon. Sometime soon. I have no idea when. Rick Reeder, there of BlackRock. Let's get to the market desk again, shall we? Equities pulling back about 0.5%. Scarlett, as you move us.
Yeah, John, I'm still keeping an eye on the collateral damage from President Trump's plan to ban WeChat and, of course, TikTok, because WeChat is owned by Tencent, and Tencent has some key gaming assets in the U.S. Bloomberg Intelligence reports that Tencent owns 4.8% of Activision Blizzard. Also, game makers like Activision face potential income loss because they collaborate with Tencent, which was the world's biggest games publisher last year. Zillow moving higher by 13%. Shut-in buyers and renters turn to web options as home visits virtually disappeared. The revenue blew away estimates, but the home flipping part of the business, as you would imagine, slowed down. The company bought just 86 homes last quarter. And Illumina off by 12%. The gene splicing tools maker reports a big miss. Revenue fell 24% more than expected. Of course, a lot of research facilities at universities were shut down by the pandemic, and hospitals were reprioritizing everything on the COVID crunch. TrueCar up by almost 40%. This is the auto information provider selling its ALG unit for $135 million to JD Power, but it still has access to the information. BTIG says this move to sell a non-core asset is outstanding. John?
Scarlett Fu, thank you. 11 minutes into the session, equities a bit softer. Coming up on this program, we'll catch up with Anastasia Amoroso of JP Morgan, and next, Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director. That conversation coming up right here on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Fiscal policy actions that have been taken thus far have made a critical difference to families, businesses, and communities across the country. And it will take continued support from both monetary and fiscal policy to achieve that.
The Fed really can't stimulate the economy very much when people don't want to borrow and businesses depressed and so on. What they can do is make sure we don't have a financial calamity on top of the real calamity, which they've been doing very well and will continue to do. We need fiscal support.
It also is a very important step in dealing with inequality. Ultimately, inequality and the institutional biases that are baked into the cake of our economy.
I wouldn't be surprised if we did get the scenario Tom and I were talking about, that the market would just take over and drive interest rates into negative territory, even without the support of the Fed.
14 minutes into the session this morning. Good morning. What a morning so far. The S&P coming in 0.2%, down 0.2 on the Nasdaq, coming off a 7-day winning streak on the Nasdaq. And coming into today, the S&P 500 around about 1% from record highs. Joining us on the phone right now, Anastasia Amoroso of JP Morgan Private Bank. Anastasia, great to catch up with you. Your initial take on a payrolls report from about an hour ago, please.
Jonathan, it was clearly a solid payrolls report that exceeded expectations, and what I particularly liked about it is how widespread the job gains have been. It's many different sectors, but specifically leisure, hospitality, retail, they've all seen jobs added. And the reason why that's so important is because, of course, this was for the month of July, where we did see the virus activity spike across the United States, except for the Northeast, and we saw some rollback of the reopenings. But this jobs report really tells you that despite the fact that we still have not managed to control and contain the virus, the economic activity is actually ongoing and it's going forward. And so that's what I think is really important for the markets, is that we've managed to decouple the virus from the economic activity to an extent. And if you can do that, then you can decouple equity and equity volatility from the state of the virus. So that's really a big positive of the payrolls report. And then, on top of that, when we look at some of the latest virus numbers and cases across the United States, even in the bad spots, they're starting to work their way down. So I think that combined with the pretty optimistic payrolls report bodes well for the market.
Well, let's get to one of your calls straight out the gate. Sell calls on gold. Why, Anastasia?
Yeah, gold has been a phenomenal asset to hold, of course, over the last 6 months, over the last year. And when you think about why we wanted to hold gold, is because we had this expectation that real rates are going to move much lower. So that's what's played out over the last 6 months. Now we're looking at U.S. real yields around -1%. So part of the reason why that's happened is because the inflation break-even here in the last 3 or 4 months have moved materially higher, while the nominal yields have actually stayed pretty well contained. The break-evens went from 60 basis points to 165 basis points. And I think at this point, at these levels, we don't see that much more to the move. So the point is, we've seen this massive move lower in real yields, but I just don't think we're going to see that much more. So we expect to see some stabilization in real yields. And at these levels of gold, I would say they're reflecting the reality of a very negative real yield environment. So this is not to say that we shouldn't hold gold in the portfolios, and we do, and I think it's more of a neutral stance, because the reality is we never know where the expected risks are going to come and where from, but the predicted catalysts for gold, I would say, have largely played out. So that's why I keep the position, keep it as neutral, but sell gold calls, because when you look at the volatility on some of those calls, it's actually picked up because of the demand and the upside chasing of gold. So we take the other side of that, and we will be selling some of the top side and monetizing it and getting what we think is pretty rich premium here.
Anastasia, always great to catch up with you. Anastasia Amoroso, conversation will have to continue. Let's get to the price action of the moment, shall we? 17 minutes into the session here in New York City. Your equity market shaping up as follows. Off the back of a nice, tidy upside surprise on a payrolls report, equities do not pick up. We stay lower. We're down 0.2% after a really nice run of gains on the S&P. We break a 5-day winning streak there. You break a 7-day winning streak on the Nasdaq. That's the story of the equity market in and around all-time highs. In the bond market, here's the story for you. Treasury 0.52%. Yields come in around about a basis point. In the FX market, euro dollar 117.70, a much stronger dollar. The conversation shifts from payrolls to fiscal negotiations very, very quickly. That is the next stop for this market. What happens next on Capitol Hill? A big focus. From New York City, for our audience worldwide, for the White House's view on the jobs report, I'm very pleased to say on Bloomberg TV and Bloomberg Radio, we're joined by Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director. Larry, fantastic to catch up with you, sir. You're looking well. Let's get straight to it. Payrolls looking good. What does that payrolls report mean for the talks that you guys are having on Capitol Hill on the next steps over fiscal policy?
Well, look, I think the continued rise in payrolls, and bear in mind, Jonathan, this was a hotspot payroll report. This was July 20th to 18, and the surging hotspots in the South and West and some other places began in the back end of June and lasted through July. you know, there was some pullback of reopenings and so forth. And yet, we still got 1.8 million with a big decline, almost a full percentage point drop in the unemployment rate, which will move to single digits easily in the summer and fall. So I think that's a very key point, just in terms of the economy. Now, how that reacts, how that reflects on the talks are rather stalemated right now. There was a better tone early this week, but through last evening, there hadn't been any breakthroughs. That's unfortunate. However, the president has said several times in the last 48 hours, and I can attest to it because I'm working on it, he's going to use executive orders, administrative discretion, the full powers of the federal government in order to get certain priorities through. For example, a payroll tax cut, which will incentivize work returning to work, and also give a bonus to those stalwarts who stayed on the job. We'd like to reform unemployment. We'd like to put in benefits for reemployment or some kind of business retention credits. We want to make sure the eviction moratorium continues apace. We think the executive branch can do that. We think he has the authority to do that. We are exploring and drafting documents as you and I speak this morning.
Okay.
And people should take him very, very seriously. If the Democrat side doesn't want to get it done, certain essentials, we will get it done to make sure that folks go back to work, to make sure that kids can go back to school, and to make sure that this V-shaped recovery continues well through this year.
Well, Larry, I'll stay away from the V-shaped predictions. Let's stick to policy and what you guys are up to at the moment. For a threat to be credible, we have to test the credibility of that threat. Now, I'm trying to understand, if you can do this, why haven't you done it? If you can do something with executive powers, what are you waiting for?
Well, stay tuned. I mean, look, we've been in a negotiation. That has to come first. All I'll say is stay tuned. The president, I'm sure, will be weighing in with his own views as the day goes on.
Well, do you have a deadline, Larry? Is it the end of the day? Are the talks scheduled for today if they're not successful? I need some color here. Do you have talks scheduled for today on Capitol Hill?
I'm sure there will be talks, whether formally or informally. I have no doubt about that. Chief Mark Meadows said the other day, if we didn't get it done by Friday, we may not get it done at all. I think he's just being realistic about that. Secretary Mnuchin is in there pitching away, but, you know, a lot of the other team's asks are just not realistic. They lack common sense, and a lot of it, you know, probably as much as $1 trillion was obligated but unspent through the March CARES Act, so we may be able to repurpose that. So, look, we're, you know, there's a process here.
Understood.
The process is negotiations, but the president has said with great clarity in the last 2 days, if need be, he is more than happy. Indeed, I think he would like to use executive authority to get things done. Look, we stand for lower taxes and rollback of regulations and fair trade.
Sure, Larry,
those are our principles.
You and I talk about that every month.
He is not going to give that back.
Okay.
Just because of a recalcitrant House of Representatives.
Larry, I'm not going to dance around it.
Executive authority.
Let me ask it again.
Executive authority.
If you don't have a successful breakthrough by the end of today, are you going to do it or not? Or are we going to carry on having this conversation through to next week?
Well, Jonathan, we might, you know, I'm always willing to talk to you if you want to talk next week.
I'd love to
talk next week. I don't want to second guess what the president's going to do. He's a very good communicator, and you can be assured he will be out and about today and probably tomorrow talking about this. It'll be on his time. I'm not here to announce anything. It's up to him.
Well, it's not on our time, is it? And to be fair, it's not on the president's either, Larry, because the real deadline was last week when the enhanced unemployment benefits expired. This self-imposed Friday deadline was about politicians too scared to go home and face the embarrassment of not getting a deal done on Capitol Hill. So we can talk about the scope for compromise now, so let's do that. As far as I understand, the Republicans in the White House has offered $400 per week in enhanced unemployment benefits. Democrats are at $600. They're pushing back. As far as I understand, you're offering $200 billion for state aid. The Democrats want $1 trillion. They're pushing back. The spread right now is still $2 trillion. Where's the scope for compromise, Larry?
Well, Jonathan, much as I might like to, I'm really not here this morning to negotiate with you. All right? I'm going to let the negotiators negotiate.
Fully understood, but send a message to the American people as to why you guys are going to do the right thing and why you're willing to get something done instead of nothing.
Well, look, the something has to be good. It has to be smart, it has to be efficient, and it has to have job and economic growth incentives. That's the something. And again, the president has a clear set of growth principles, and he is more than willing to help where help is necessary throughout the economy. There's still hardship. Yeah, good jobs numbers today. We had a lot of numbers. ISMs are booming.
Sure.
Inventories are falling. Car sales are surging. That tells you this is a self-sustaining recovery. We want to keep it that way. His message is going to be lower taxes, smart spending, and continued deregulation, as well as fair trade deals. So that's his principles. And we can use a lot of executive authority. As I said, it's being drafted right now. I'm not going to negotiate here. I'm just saying
I don't expect to negotiate. I want to understand the balance of risk, Larry. I just want to understand the balance of risk. That's all I want to understand.
The balance of risk is one of those amorphous phrases about negotiation.
Well, let me put it a better way then. What's the biggest risk for you right now? The risk of not doing enough or the risk of doing too much?
Please, let me finish my sentence. I'm just saying, if the Congress does not act, if there's no deal, and right now it doesn't look that great, then the president will take his own actions. The solution here is to come to a pro-growth, common sense, pragmatic compromise. Thus far, that has been elusive. And in that case, the president, who is a great leader and makes good on his promises, will exercise his leadership and all of his executive federal authorities. You can count on that. You can take that to the bank.
The one thing you didn't say, though, Larry, was what you guys would do with executive powers on state aid. I've spoken to New York State. They've told me if they don't get the aid, the austerity begins immediately. Now, you're an economist. You've got way more experience than I on Wall Street, going back decades. You know that the federal government is the only one right now that can act counter-cyclically. States do not have that benefit. They do not have that option. And you also know if they don't get that aid, the austerity starts immediately. So as the administration, as the government, we've got to understand what's the federal strategy when the state-level austerity kicks in because we can't find an agreement on state aid.
Well, you know, it's hard to say, Jonathan, that the CARES bill and other bills in the last 3-4 months is austerity. I mean, we put out, what, $3.5 trillion of fiscal assistance in many forms. The Federal Reserve, all in, has put out over $7 trillion through the money supply and their lending facilities. This is not austerity. I mean, that's what the numbers
Not from the
show.
federal government, Larry. I'm not suggesting it will be. I'm saying from states, they will have to cut. You know they will.
The states, I will say this. Because of the pandemic contraction, the income statements of state and local governments and the federal government have deteriorated. Absolutely. Now, what is the solution? Some of the solution is in aid. Some of the solution is economic growth, where the revenues will start pouring in and more people go back to work and they pay taxes, and so do businesses. We have given the states, through prior deals, literally hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, I don't want to second guess. I'm not here to negotiate. We are looking at all of these asks from our friends across the aisle. I know the president is especially interested in making sure there are sufficient resources to get the kids back to school. If we apply the guidelines of distancing and masking and testing and good hygiene, the kids can get back to school. If the schools need more equipment, if there's COVID-related expenses, I think there's a chance the president would be happy to pitch in. But the bill that we have been given from the other team goes way, way, way beyond that, and there's a lot of Democrat asks that simply don't make sense, certainly not in the present context. And so we have to separate that out. It's not so simple to just say there's fiscal austerity in the states. Hundreds and hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars have now passed from federal to states. So let's try to be smart and efficient, and let's target, again, I want to target people getting back to work.
I know you do.
I want to target kids going back to school.
I know you do.
I want to target employment incentives, not unemployment incentives. I want to target re-employment incentives. I want to make sure that people do not get evicted from their apartments or their homes. These are things we may be able to do through executive authority because the Congress can't seem to get together for a bipartisan deal.
Let's see if it happens.
But we will get it done. Growth, schools, jobs, kids. Let me make this real simple. And we will do whatever federal levers we have at our disposal. That is the president's pledge, and you'll hear plenty from him
Larry,
in the coming hours and days.
I've sat across from you. I know you're a good man. I know that you want the best for the American people. I've also watched what it's like to watch your dad come home because the business has got to close. I've watched what happened when the house has to be sold and your family's got to move in with a relative. I know what that feels like, the economic pain that people are going through in this country at the moment. And Larry, what really upsets me, and I think it's borderline embarrassing, is that if this equity market was 20% lower, I think you and I'd have a different conversation, wouldn't we? There'd be much more urgency. And what I don't understand is the lack of urgency right now, Larry. I just don't understand it. If you can do these things to make the lives of people better, why weren't they done yesterday?
Jonathan, let me say this. Look, I'm a bleeding heart too, okay? I'm a Jack Kemp bleeding heart conservative on the supply side. You can't measure these things in just dollars spent. I mean, we know this. We know this. You put in $3.5 trillion already. The other team wants another $3 or $4 trillion. Is that the answer? There are other better targeted ways. I want everybody to go back to work. You know, we've created over 9 million jobs. We're clawed back about 40% of the terrible loss from the pandemic.
Larry, if you wanted to go and eat with me tonight, we can't even eat inside a restaurant in New York City. Come on.
Jonathan, the only ask I have right now is you let me finish my sentence.
Of course, by all means.
The military and telecom background, Anderson worked on repairing damaged cell phone towers in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Some might be tempted to label him a disaster capitalist, seeking lucrative government contracts for his expertise. But as Anderson finds himself in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, he and his associates are developing a variety of pro bono recovery projects that target the island's hardest hit areas.
I see two Puerto Ricos. We're here in San Juan. They have telecommunications restored. They may or may not have power, but basic services are in place. They're able to get food. They're able to buy things. They're surviving. And when you look outside of the San Juan area, you can go 15 minutes from here and find areas that are devastated. I'm working on the devastated side.
Today, he's put together a boots-on-the-ground mission to provide medical care to some of the island's most isolated and vulnerable residents. Steve Berenbaum is one of Anderson's business associates. He offered an extra car and a set of hands.
So we received an initial report from a nurse that was out in the area. We're headed to the northeast region of Utuado for some people that are in need of urgent medical assistance.
Dr. Sally Priester is a physician from San Juan. She filled a van with medical supplies at her own expense and brought along a team of nurses. Google Maps estimated our first destination to be a 90-minute drive. But it didn't account for obstacles like this. Our first stop was the home of an 82-year-old blind Vietnam veteran. His roof was blown off by the storm, and he's been living alone in a back shed for nearly 2 months.
His cane actually got broken in the storm, so he's limited mobility. He has a number of medical ailments. Dr. Priester's having a look at him. We called the VA. They're going to get him set up with what he needs, get him stabilized so he can then be transported either to an evacuation center or off the island. It's when the chain gets broken, when those families that are connected to them leave the island or take off. These guys get left at the end of the road, and it's tough.
FEMA was not officially part of Robert's team, and their arrival caught everyone by surprise. Their job here was to survey and report back to their superiors, and did not come with medical aid of any kind.
People think that FEMA is there to hand out bottles of water. It's not what they do. FEMA has a role to play. They have a very specific role. They bring in ships, they bring in airplanes, they bring in tractor trailers with pallets of things. But they're a big machine, and there's gaps in that thing. And you're seeing one of the gaps here, and we help fill that role. These guys are in a bad situation before, and now they're struggling for real basic things. One of the risks that you run is people going from fear to hopelessness. Those are the folks that we're trying to reach.
And how are they reached? How are they even found?
Word of mouth, mostly.
And what's your role in all this?
Ghost in the machine. I'm lucky enough to be able to communicate with folks in FEMA, the state of Puerto Rico.
For a ghost, Robert makes his presence well known. Not only was he the de facto leader of the mission, now with FEMA in tow, he created his own maps to survey storm damage.
So we're right here.
And delivered them to FEMA HQ free of charge.
I have pretty good reach.
Perhaps that's how he managed to earn himself a coveted FEMA badge without actually working for them. And it's these relationships that allow him to operate more efficiently than an NGO or a government agency.
We're able to resolve problems at a different level.
Our next stop was on a mountaintop, a family of 11 struggling to care for their special needs brother in what was left of their house.
Probably we are the first health team to come and visit this family.
Muy bien, todo muy bien.
The patient has Down syndrome. He is all day in bed. The difficulty with this is the patient cannot be alone. The most important thing is that you need to take care of the chronic disease besides disability, because they have been not going to a doctor, and no doctor has come in here yet.
So we need a refill of this medication.
After maybe 54 days, it's not getting better. And the only way that you can be able to see that is coming to the ground, drive, and see the people and talk to the people.
You can see San Juan from here, but you can't get there. It's like the Emerald City.
On this stop, we caught word that a man living alone at the edge of the jungle was in need of care.
So we decided to take a little detour, come up here and check out and see what's going on. One of the challenges is to find those people that are at the end of these roads that need help.
¿Pero por qué estás solo? ¿Por qué estás por acá tan solo? I'm asking about why he's alone right here. He said things of life happens. Yeah, I'm here by myself. So ¿dónde vive acá? En la parte de... This is not a job. To do this, you need to have passion for what you can do. You're not going to get paid.
It's said in disaster response and emergency response that the real first responders are your neighbors. You don't need to wait for a lucrative FEMA contract to go out and do good and to help the community.
In the end, do you feel like you're making a difference?
Lives you touch and people that you can affect. I don't really think about it in those terms.
But why do you do it?
It helps me sleep at night. I think it's as much for the people that are going out to help and do things as it is for the people that you affect.
Whether out of altruism, or the lure of a paid gig, or some mixture of the two, Anderson hopes to stay here to help shape Puerto Rico's future.
Puerto Rico's essentially been a colony for 400 years. It was treated poorly by the Spanish. It was not treated well by the United States when they first got here. Puerto Rico can continue in the way that it's always been, or Puerto Rico can rebuild itself like nothing that's ever been. And we have to do everything we can to make that real. That's the bottom line.
When I met him first online, I found him to be really sweet. I think I was the one who was talking for an hour. He was just listening.
When we met, I saw her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind, which was, something that I was looking for.
Anshu and Sumit are one of about 12 million couples that get married in India every year. Unlike their parents' generation, they're not from two close villages, but from two cities on opposite sides of the country. And their love didn't start through community matchmaking, marriage brokers, or classified ads in newspapers, but began online.
So we met through jeevansati.com. So it's basically an online portal where we have detailed profile of different grooms and brides.
It makes a lot of remote profiles who are located in distant areas more accessible.
Thanks to growing internet and smartphone usage, matrimony websites and apps in India are starting to disrupt the matchmaking industry. More and more people are finding their partners at the click of a mouse. jeevansati.com, where Anshu and Sumit met, is one of the biggest players. Young Indians looking for love set up profiles including their caste and horoscope, but their criteria for choosing spouses appears to be changing.
We have seen the shift from traditional caste community conservative parameters to something like which is more focused on education, employment.
Anshu and Sumit's marriage was initiated by their parents, but modern Indian couples like them have more input than previous generations.
We looked up to them to agree for the proposal, but it was primarily our decision that we wanted to be with each other.
So what's the emoji like you use the most to send to each other?
There's a bear which basically we use for indicating a hug.
Yeah, that's our language basically. Bear icon for a hug.
Time flies when you're in love, and just 1.5 months after they first met online, the couple got engaged. They decided to hold their wedding less than 3 months later. But planning a traditional Hindu wedding on such short notice is no easy task. The massive event usually lasts 3 days, has various ceremonies and celebrations, and involves the entire two families and hundreds of guests. Luckily, there are websites and apps for that.
We searched online, we got in touch with Wedding Brigade, and they helped us finalize the venue. And it makes the search faster and efficient.
Startups like the Wedding Brigade are challenging traditional wedding planners in this $50 billion industry. It provides various services from booking banquet venues to buying wedding gowns. The website makes money by charging commission from vendors.
People don't want to be limited to what is available around them. They want to know the entire range of options available before making a decision. And now it's easy to find almost everything on one portal.
Anshu and Sumit are officially married in a ritual that has gone on for thousands of years, but their love started in a very new way. Technologies might be changing the way couples meet, date, and get married in India, but they're definitely not changing everything.
The technology was only the first level help that we could get to find each other. Everything else was like very humanly and emotions and feelings based.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren has become a symbol of everything the Republican Party stands against.
Everyone gets a right to basic health care. We need strong oversight of these banks.
A legal scholar and a consumer advocate turned politician, Warren has branded herself as a champion of the working class and made a career out of standing up to big business. While rumors of a 2020 presidency bid remain just that,
I'm not running for president.
her Senate seat is up for re-election in 2018, and Republicans are already pumping millions into super PACs to defeat her. This is the story of how a law professor and politician came to be seen as the biggest threat to Republican values and the greatest hope for progressive America. Elizabeth Warren was born Elizabeth Ann Herron, the youngest of 3 siblings, on June 22, 1949, in Oklahoma City to middle-class parents. After waiting tables to help her family pay the bills, Warren became a star on the high school debate team. She landed a scholarship to George Washington University at the age of 16, but 2 years later dropped out to marry her high school sweetheart, Jim Warren. By 1980, Warren was a mother of 2, divorced and remarried, had earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Houston, a juris degree from Rutgers, and practicing law in New Jersey. Warren then went on to become an influential law professor, teaching, lecturing, and publishing highly cited work on bankruptcy and commercial law at 7 universities around the country, eventually settling at Harvard Law School. But Warren wasn't always a liberal lion.
Elizabeth Warren used to be a Republican, actually.
That's Stephen Dennis.
I'm a Senate reporter for Bloomberg. Around the time that Elizabeth Warren switched parties, she became a fierce opponent of a Republican drive to make it much harder to file for bankruptcy. She fought that for a decade. It ended up passing anyways.
While her efforts ultimately failed, her warning calls were heard in 2008.
We're in the midst of a serious financial crisis. Our entire economy is in danger, and without immediate action by Congress, America could slip into a financial panic, and a distressing scenario would unfold.
Professor Warren was tapped to help with oversight in the government bailout.
She would excoriate bankers and their bonuses and their practices.
Why should the U.S. taxpayer alone carry Citi?
She proposed a series of tough regulations, which became the basis for much of the Dodd-Frank financial law that we have today. That sort of catapulted her to national stardom, particularly among the progressive left.
Encouraged by her newfound notoriety, Warren declared her bid for the U.S. Senate on September 14, 2011. During the race, her opponent Scott Brown tried to derail Warren by accusing her of falsely claiming Native American heritage, a controversy that earned her the nickname Pocahontas. Nevertheless, she was victorious and won the Senate seat by a comfortable margin. She used her new tenure to challenge everyone, from banking regulators and Treasury officials to members of Wall Street and Congress.
I'm really concerned that too big to fail has become too big for trial. We need tough new laws to hold corporate executives personally accountable. No one should be above the law.
She called for Wells Fargo CEO John Stump to resign for fraud, introduced the Bank on Student Loans Fairness Act, and reintroduced the 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act. In 2016, after staying silent during the Democratic primary battle, Warren finally endorsed Hillary Clinton and had some harsh words for candidate Trump.
Donald Trump is a loud, nasty, thin-skinned fraud who has never risked anything for anyone, and that is just one of the many reasons he will never be president of the United States.
But she was wrong.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Warren wasted no time resisting Trump's agenda.
Have you ever managed or overseen a $1 trillion loan program?
I have not.
How about a $1 billion loan program?
I have not.
Okay.
In the Donald Trump era, Elizabeth Warren has been playing defense and trying to prevent Donald Trump and his cabinet appointees from rolling back protections that she helped enact.
Warren actually found herself rebuked by Mitch McConnell for reading a letter by Coretta Scott King about Jeff Sessions' record on racism during his confirmation.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
That moment became become something that's on T-shirts, bumper stickers, slogans, and that really galvanized a lot of support for her. It's been very hard for Republicans to get much of anything done this year, and that's at least in part to this resistance movement that Elizabeth Warren has helped champion.
We are here to fight back.
Enough of Elizabeth Warren. Like you,
millions of dollars are being funneled to defeat Warren in the midterm elections in 2018. But it's the rumors of a 2020 presidential bid that has further prompted powerful donors to fund her opposition, often using the same playbook of constant and ruthless ad campaigns that many believe helped Trump win in 2016. It's anyone's guess if she will endure what Hillary could not.
You know, the question for Elizabeth Warren is whether she can go from being a liberal firebrand to somebody who can regularly get 60 votes for initiatives in the Senate and 218 in the House and drive an agenda, and whether she can bring together coalitions for political victories. That's the challenge, and we'll see what happens.
Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, has made some powerful opponents.
He doesn't know me, never met me, doesn't know what I'm all about. I think they're very rude statements, and frankly, tell him I will remember those statements.
My message to Donald Trump and his team is that, your views of Islam are ignorant.
He's the first Muslim mayor of a major Western capital and proud of it. This is how Sadiq Khan went from the son of Pakistani immigrants to a lawyer, lawmaker, and now the mayor of London. Khan's parents emigrated from Pakistan. His father was a bus driver, his mother a stay-at-home seamstress. The 10-strong Khan family squeezed into a 3-bedroom flat in South London. He wanted to be a dentist, but TV in the 1980s convinced him otherwise.
Objection!
LA law with its swagger and ill-fitting suits caught Khan's eye. He graduated in 1991 with a degree in law from North London University and joined a human rights firm. Khan worked a number of high-profile cases, often clashing with London's Metropolitan Police Force. But he had bigger political ambitions.
This is what being a new MP is like, squatting on a bench in the absence of an office, dealing with letters from constituents.
Reports are just coming in of an explosion here in London.
And there's just explosions, and then it was just smoke everywhere.
Everyone's just asking what's happened.
Only 2 months after Khan entered the Commons as a Member of Parliament, London was attacked by Islamist extremists.
That day will stay with me for the rest of my life.
He spoke out against the attacks both as a London MP and as a Muslim.
He has been very clear about his opposition to violence, opposition to terrorism, and has set out to make the case for a more open and peaceful Islam.
That's Thomas Penny, one of Bloomberg's Westminster correspondents.
Here is a man who is a Muslim, and he is standing up and being open and straightforward and being clear that the problem here is not Islam, but it's Islamic extremism.
In 2015, a decade after the attacks, Khan ran for mayor of London, and his faith was back in the headlines. His opponent, Zach Goldsmith, trying to link Khan to radical Islam.
The debate got again personal and nasty. The Goldsmith camp has called Khan extreme and accused him of associating with, quote, those who seek to do our police and capital harm.
It's a pattern of behaviour.
Even the former Prime Minister David Cameron repeated the allegations.
He shared a platform with Sajil Shahid, the man who trained the ringleader of the 7/7 attacks and accused the United States of bringing 9/11 on themselves.
But the smears didn't stick.
Zach Goldsmith ran a very negative campaign that was based on what people knew was a lie.
This election was not without controversy. And I'm so proud that London has today chosen hope over fear and unity over division.
After taking the mayor's office with a comfortable majority, Khan has brought a business-like efficiency to the role, scrapping expensive vanity projects like the Garden Bridge and the new Routemaster buses, which cost £350,000 each. The former lawyer who used to fight the police in court is now praised for his close relationship with them.
I was talking to a very senior police officer in the Metropolitan Police who said there was a sea change when he went into City Hall, and the police were saying how much they welcomed this because they knew where they stood and it was more straightforward to work with. So he works like a lawyer, he works like a government minister.
Khan's kept his faith at the fore. He's an outspoken voice for moderate Muslims across the world.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Now, by giving the impression that Islam and the West are incompatible, you're playing into the hands of the extremists.
The ongoing spat between Khan and US President Donald Trump escalated.
I'm placing stop on profit for euro at 117.74. It will give us £200 in profit.
Terrorism than the Prime Minister or the Labour leader. His story of going from the son of an immigrant bus driver to the mayor of one of the greatest cities in the world plays well with Londoners. But can he appeal to the rest of the nation? Has Khan got his eye on the top job? And is the UK ready for a Muslim Prime Minister?
Okay, we close position in euro at 117.74. Profit £200.
What does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room